Hegel's Philosophy of Nature, Mathematical Mechanics, paragraph 259. The present, future and past, the dimensions of time, constitute the becoming of externality as such, and its dissolution into the differences of being as passing over into nothing, and of nothing as passing over into being. The immediate disappearance of these differences into individuality is the present as now, which, as it excludes individuality and is at the same time simply continuous in the other moments, is itself merely this disappearance of its being into nothing, and of nothing into its being. Remark. The finite present is now fixed as being, and as the concrete unity, distinguished from the negative, the abstract moments of the past and the future. It is therefore the affirmative factor. Yet in itself this being is merely abstract and disappears into nothing. Incidentally, these dimensions do not occur in nature, where time is now as separately subsistent differences, for they are only necessary in subjective representation, in memory, and in fear or hope. The past and the future of time or space, insofar as they have being in nature. For space is negated time, just as sublated space is initially the point, which developed for itself is time. There is no science of time corresponding to geometry, the science of space. Temporal differences do not have this indifference of self-externality, which constitutes the immediate determinability of space, and unlike this determinability, do not therefore give rise to figurations. Time first becomes capable of such figurations when the understanding paralyzes it and reduces its negativity to a unit. This dead unity, which is thought's highest externality, gives rise to external combinations. These are the figures of arithmetic, which may be applied by the understanding to equality and inequality, identity and difference. One could go further and work out the thought of a philosophical mathematics apprehended through notions, instead of the assumed determinations from which the method employed by the understanding derives ordinary mathematics. It is because mathematics is the science of the finite determinations of magnitude, which are supposed to remain firmly and consistently in their finitude, and may not go beyond these determinations, that it is essentially a science of the understanding, and since it is capable of realizing this science in a perfect manner, it has the advantage over the other sciences of this kind of not being contaminated by the admixture of heterogeneous notions or empirical application. It is always possible, therefore, that the notion may establish a more exact awareness of the guiding principles of the operations of arithmetic and the theorems of geometry. It would, however, by a superfluous and thankless task, to attempt forcibly to manipulate such a refractory and inadequate medium as spatial figures and numbers into a means for expressing thoughts. Because of their simplicity, the elementary primary figures and numbers may be employed as symbols without giving rise to misunderstandings, but they remain a heterogeneous and perfunctory way of expressing thought. The first essays in pure thought had recourse to this means. Pythagoras' system of numbers furnishes the most famous example of this. Richer concepts will find these means completely inadequate, however, because their external combination and the contingency of connection in general is not suited to the notion, and where the many relations which are possible in combinations of numbers and figures should be held together, radical ambiguity is introduced. The result in any case is that the fluidity of the notion is dissipated in an external medium of this kind, so that each determination falls into indifferent extrinsicality. This ambiguity could only be removed by explanation. The essential expression of thought is then the explanation, however, and the symbolization becomes a worthless superfluity. Other mathematical determinations, such as the infinite and its relationships, the infinitely small, factors, powers, etc., have their true notions in philosophy itself. It is wrong-headed to think that they should be borrowed and adapted from mathematics, where they are not employed in conformity with the notion, and where they are often taken up at random. It is rather by means of philosophy that they can be corrected and given significance. In order to avoid thinking and determining by means of the notion, indolence has recourse to formulate and deals in their ready-made schemata, which are in no way an immediate expression of thought. The truly philosophical science of mathematics, considered as the doctrine of quantities, would be the science of measures, but this already assumes the real nature and the particularity of things, which is first present in concrete nature. Because of the external nature of quantity, this would certainly also be the most difficult of all sciences. Addition. The dimensions of time complete that which is determinate in intuition, in that they posit for intuition the totality or reality of the notion of time, which is becoming. This reality consists of the abstract moments of the unity which constitute becoming, each being posited for itself as a whole, although under opposite determinations. Each of these two determinations is therefore in itself the unity of being and nothing, but they are also different. This difference can only be that of arising and passing away. In the first, the principle with which one begins is being in the past, of Hades. The past has already existed as world history or natural events, but it is approached by being posited with the determination of not being. In the second determination, the opposite is the case. In the future, the first determination is not being. Being becomes later, although not in time. The middle term is the undifferentiated unity of both, in which neither the one or the other is the determining element. The present is, only because the past is not. The being of the now has the determination of not being, and the not being of its being is the future. The present is this negative unity. The not being replaced by now is the past. The being of not being contained in the present is the future. If one considers time positively, one can therefore say that only the present is, before and after is not. But the concrete present is the result of the past, and is pregnant with the future. The true present is therefore eternity. Incidentally, it would also be permissible to find mathematics as the philosophical consideration of space and time. If one attempted to treat the figurations of space and of the unit philosophically, however, they would lose their characteristic significance and shape. A philosophy of them would be a matter of logic, or to the extent that one attributed a more concrete significance to the concepts, even become another concrete philosophical science. Mathematics only takes into consideration the determination of quantity involved in these objects, and as we have seen, ignores time itself and concentrates only upon the figurations and combinations of the unit. In the theory of motion, time will certainly also be treated by this science, but applied mathematics, precisely because it is the application of pure mathematics to a given material, and the determinations of this material are taken from experience, is in no respect an immanent science.